One other piece I'm going to speak to and maybe even expand on a little bit more than what I did in the transmission earlier. And that has to do with this idea of releasing interpretations and conclusions that aren't true. This is kind of shifting gears a little bit, but it's a very important piece of the puzzle for current energetic terrain and what is to come. I was shown this analogy, this idea of how the mind works. It's like if we decide something is a certain way, we will actually block our awareness of things and we can't see it. It's like we create blind spots for ourselves. And so that's kind of what conclusions do, or interpretations that we're really attached to do. And these conclusions or interpretations aren't necessarily always conscious. These might be conclusions or interpretations that we inherited in the womb or in another incarnation, and we've just been carrying it unconsciously. That creates a blind spot, or we have a grid that holds a certain belief, which is the same as a conclusion that creates a blind spot. We're not able to see fully, clearly all the evidence in front of us. And so the metaphor, the analogy, the example they gave me was this idea of imagine that you are going to the kitchen in someone's home and you're there as a guest and you're asking for a can opener. And they say to you, it's in the drawer over there. And so you go to the drawer, and for some reason, you think that can openers are yellow. And that's just something that's always been something you experienced. Oh, well, can openers are yellow. Every can opener I've ever seen is yellow, so they must all be yellow. We might not have that whole conversation and play it out, but that's like what's concluded somewhere in our psyche. Oh, well, can openers are yellow. So when you open the drawer and you're looking for the can opener, you can't see it because you don't see a yellow anything. Or if there's yellow in there, it's not a can opener. And you're rifling through and you're like, I don't see it. I can't, you close the drawer and you walk over to your friend or your host and you say, there's not a can opener in there. And they walk over to the drawer, the host, and they open it and they pull out the can opener. And it's like stainless steel or a different color. And you're like, it takes you a minute to orient. And you're like, oh, I guess that is a can opener. Hmm. That example, while it's simple, is hopefully one that doesn't trigger anyone in any way because it's just a can opener. It's not anything that we've attached a certain meaning to. Um, is an example of how the mind will limit what we perceive, what we see, how we see, which then influences what we think, what we feel. And so play with this idea that the silly example of a can opener can be a touchstone for you, and maybe you reinvent it in a way that's more aligned for you, of why it's so important, especially during this time of navigating unprecedented terrain, physical dimension. We need to be able to see clearly everything in front of us. And so when you partner with your higher self and you simply make the request, I'm willing to release all the conclusions I've made at any moment about anything that is not absolute truth. Will you help me? Will you release any conclusions I've made that is not true, that is not an absolute, always situation? It's like being invited to be unhypnotized by your higher self. Then you allow. Then you be willing to release all the meaning you've given everything. We're going to model this. And we're going to walk you through a process. We invite you at the level of your higher self, bodies, higher self, and teams, to work with the energetic fields and the guides to locate a super safe, supportive dimension where you can go and sit across from your higher self, which is you in a higher realm. Body Deva is sitting across from its higher self. Teams are sitting across from their higher selves. Everybody in their own lane. Ascended masters are helping support this. And as you lean in to you as a being, feel into this idea of you in absolute truth, that you are light. You are an aspect of the divine, a unique aspect of the divine that emanates from Source itself. You have a divine spark in the heart of Source. And take a moment, if you choose, to create a touchstone for truth there as that resonance. I am that I am. And from this place, we invite you to anchor into the truth of you. And are you willing to release your attachment to everything you've identified as, decided was true, concluded was true, that actually isn't true, in order to have more of what is true? Are you willing to release all the meaning you've given what is less than truth and what has you identifying as less than what you are? And whatever doesn't allow that, will you release and uncreate it? And so just imagine inviting your higher self to do this for you from that higher perspective. Higher self, will you release all conclusions I've made that aren't true? I'm willing to release all the meaning I've given it. I'm willing to release all judgments, conclusions, interpretations that I decided for myself or inherited that are not true. Maybe it's someone else's interpretation that we agreed to at some point, and it's not actually accurate. Or things have shifted. Maybe it was accurate at the time, but now it isn't. The whole terrain is different now. The chess pieces have moved, so to speak. And retrieving all reference points for you, for your identity, for even where you're referencing home off of everyone and everything in the external back to your line of light. Anchoring deeply into your own core line of light. There we go. Balance and stabilize. Update all grids, all reference points, all ways in which you perceive and are perceived.